Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Jenny Zeller and I'm the Arts and Nature Curator at Bernheim. I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a second, but just want to thank you today for joining us for this rare glimpse into the studio of sculptor installation artist Lee Running, who is a 2020 Bernheim Artist in Residence. She will be preparing her return to Bernheim in September. And we will be learning about her work and artistic practice that will drive the creation of 2 meditations on the American sycamore tree. We are going to keep you on mute throughout the webinar, but please use the chat feature to ask questions as we go through, and I will do my best to get those answered for you. We are streaming live on Facebook, which is very exciting. So thank you to all who are joining us via Facebook. And if you are doing so, drop us a line in the chat box or give us a thumbs up to let us know that you are here. We will be going for 1 hour. You can also see Amy Landon here, who has been my partner in crime on these events. She is Bernheim's communication and marketing manager, and she will also be helping me ask questions. So thank you so much, Amy. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we can jump right into this. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to let everybody know that Bernheim is open. We are open with extended hours. We are open daily from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We are doing this through time entry reservations, which is really simple and can be done easily at bernheim.org. Again, just want to say my name is Jenny Zeller and I'm the Visual Arts Coordinator. Thank you for joining us tonight for this virtual studio tour with 2020 Artist in Residence, Lee Running. This program is part of our AIR at 40 Livestream video series. The first of these series took place last week, where we explored the world of Bernheim through the Minecraft platform. In 2016, Bernheim had its first family of artists in residence. They were collectively known as the Common People, who spent 8 weeks in Bernheim, discovering its history and habitats, and gained a lot of knowledge from volunteers and staff. And this is just kind of a small snippet of this virtual walkthrough that Adam Clark, one of the creators of the Common People, took us through last week. This is pretty cool. This is Earth Measure, which is made by local sculptor Matt Weir. And this program is archived, and you can find this on our YouTube channel as well as Facebook. I just want to take a moment to talk about who Bernheim is, because I know we have some new people in the audience tonight. So Bernheim is a nonprofit educational and recreational nature preserve. We are located 25 miles south of Louisville in Claremont, Kentucky. I always like to say that we are over 16,000 acres in size, and we are the largest area of private protected land east of the Mississippi River. We are home to over 900 species of plants. Within this 16,000 acre forest, there is also a nationally recognized 600-acre arboretum. We have large expanses of scenic woodlands with over 40 miles of hiking trails. And we are a place of artistic inspiration for artists from around the world. Our mission is connecting people to nature, and we have been doing this since 1929. We connect people to nature through a variety of lenses, one of which is nature-based education. We also do this through regenerative design and sustainable landscapes. We connect people to nature through research and land stewardship. We also do this through play and our Children at Play network. And we do this through art. And we do this through art because art attaches our hearts and minds to things that we deem important. And it resonates with people in different ways than education and science. And really, art is what sets Bernheim apart from organizations similar to us. I'm happy to report that Bernheim is celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Artist in Residence program in 2020 this year. And this is an internationally renowned program, and it annually awards artists the opportunity to live at Bernheim and create site-specific work inspired by a total immersion experience. Just a few quick stats. We've had 57 artists from 10 countries. 44 are US based from 14 states, 7 of which are from Kentucky. 3 artists have come back to Bernheim for 2 separate residencies. And I always like to say there is 1 artist who actually moved to Louisville for a short time after their residency experience. And I think that's pretty cool. Before we get into tonight's special guest, I just kind of want to point out a few things coming to Bernheim in the near future. Also in conjunction with the 40th anniversary, we will be installing the exhibition Phenomenal Bluegrass Botanicals by 2020 Artist in Residence, Gabriella Boros. This exhibition is celebrating the extraordinary achievements of 10 Kentucky women through the invocation of 10 native plants. And the work originated from beautifully carved woodblock prints that are being enlarged onto fabric banners, which will be suspended from trees throughout the Arboretum. And the work will accompany signage, will be accompanied by signage that talks about the women, their accomplishments, and the relationship between the two. These are just some phenomenal work examples. The inclusive representation of women in this exhibit will educate viewers about feminism, race, and history in a really compelling way. And I simply can't wait to bring this to Bernheim. So the installation will take place late September, and Gabriella will come to visit Bernheim both in October and December as well. So stay tuned for that. And then I also want to introduce you to Lucy Azubuike from Frankfort, Kentucky, our other 2020 Artist in Residence. Lucy is trained as a sculptor, and she actually is documenting nature as the sculptor, recognizing beautiful shapes and forms in the natural world as whole and complete works of art. Lucy's work ignites an emotional connection to the environment because her tree art discoveries often mirror the world around us. And we have helped Lucy launch a social media participatory challenge, inviting people to share their tree art findings at Bernheim and far beyond by labeling their images on social media with the hashtag 1,000,000treearts. So now we are here with our featured guest tonight. I'm so excited to introduce you to Lee Running from Omaha, Nebraska. Again, she is a sculptor and installation artist, and her visual art embraces the beauty and complexity of the natural world and is deeply connected to place. In the last year, Lee has completed 2 major projects using botanical samples from historic herbariums to create large-scale window installations, most notably in the governor's office at the Ohio State Capitol. Lee was awarded the 2017 Iowa Artist Fellowship by the Iowa Arts Council, and she has completed recent residencies at UCross, the Morgan Conservatory, Gentile, and the Santa Fe Art Institute. So I will stop sharing my screen now and hand the mic over to Lee at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, Lee Running.
Oh, Jenny, thank you so much for that introduction. It's really wonderful to see all the work that's happened at Bernheim, and it's such an honor to be a resident for your 40th anniversary. It's really a wonderful time. And it's such a rare opportunity for a sculptor to be able to do a residency that's extended and that is so embedded in place. My work is really a response to the natural world, whether it's pieces like this, where I'm repairing a broken jaw and skull of a deer that died by roadkill, or works like this where the ribs and front legs are missing from this deer. And I've replicated this, the missing pieces in glass and suspended the deer from a meat hook in a gallery. This work all began at the Santa Fe Art Institute, where I started carving and polishing roadkill deer bones and filling them with 24 karat gold. As Jenny said, a lot of my work involves very, very close observation of the natural world. And this piece, which was in the Iowa State Capitol in the governor's office early last year, is a fringed orchid, which is a species that's on the federally endangered list that used to be very common in Iowa. And I found a specimen in the Grinnell College archives that was from the same year that the Iowa State Capitol was built. And put this up in the Capitol for 6 months as a celebration of Iowa artists who are also women. This is a piece from Upper Iowa University, which is a shooting star that's also from a historic herbarium that is from an exhibition called 5 Miles from Fayette, which are all botanical species from within 5 miles of the university that are in a historic archive there. And these botanical specimens were replicated in translucent vinyl, which is mounted on the glass. And when the sunlight comes through, it casts shadows in color into the space, making it feel very much like stained glass. So this is the work that I applied to, the previous work is the work that I applied to Bernheim with. And on March 4th, I packed my Jeep and drove to Bernheim. I planned to be there for 2 months, which is such a privilege. And I arrived on the 5th of March, and this is the first photograph that I took at Bernheim the night I arrived. I didn't know, but these are sycamore trees, and these would become the inspiration for the entire installation that I want to do at Bernheim that I'll complete in September and maybe early October. These are 2 trees that are paired with each other, and they're also reflected in the water. And this idea of a repeated or paired or mirrored form will become really important in the installation moving forward. It's always interesting to go back through your camera roll and see how inspiration really came from deep observation of a place. I was allowed to bring my dog to this residency, which is a great privilege. And Rona and I hiked the first few days we were there. My proposal was to come to Bernheim to really witness spring. I wanted to see the tree branches go from bare to full leaf and really take that arc of a season as inspiration for a body of work. And this is the view from the canopy walk, the second day that I was at Bernheim. And it looks gray looking out at the space, but upon close observation, you can see that inflorescence is starting to happen on the trees. There's already these tiny, tiny buds. There's also an abundance of wildlife at Bernheim. This was an epic battle between a red-tailed hawk and a squirrel that I got to witness. And Rona and I really loved hiking. This was Elm Lick Trail, which is a 10-mile hike up beyond the Arboretum into what I thought about as the wilderness that happened beyond the sort of manicured Arboretum. So much beautiful wildlife up here. And it's about a 10-mile loop on this trail. And midway through crossing a stream, I found this sycamore tree that is just unbelievable. The opening on the, let's see which direction, at the base of the tree, right on the water, is about chest height. So you can duck into that space and stand inside the tree. The bark on the inside is gnarled and beautiful. And up above, there are these two oculi that send these shafts of light down into the space. It's almost 42 inches in diameter, so I could reach my hands out and touch the sides of the tree on either side. And it was remarkable to stand inside of this tree on the water. And it got me really interested in this species of tree itself. It also got me interested in the idea of being inside of something. This grain silo was on the same hike, also with an oculus and some open spaces at the top. And just lying on the ground and looking up at the canopy, there's this sense of round space, round light that comes down through the trees. I was witnessing spring. I was witnessing these tiny buds forming on the ends of the branches, what I started to think of as the fists of spring, these tiny, tiny potential moments. Some of them were very exuberant, these sort of wild shapes. The staff at Bernheim was incredible in helping me collect deer bones. They gave me wonderful, huge resource of bones. Many of them had been cleaned by the golden eagles that are rescued there, so it was very exciting to have that. Jenny and I started talking about the Visitors Center, which is a beautiful structure. This is the Sassafras room of the Visitors Center, which is a completely glassed in space. It's almost 2 stories internally. So there's an upper layer of windows that move around the space. And we talked about doing something with translucent vinyl on that glass. The installation has now expanded to include the windows on all sides. If I point up here, it'll be the windows that move there as well. This is so funny in reverse. So a few days later, I hiked that trail again and went back to the sycamore. And at the top of the tree, I could see that these tiny, tiny buds were beginning to form. And in the riverbed itself were seeds from last year that had burst open. And these seed forms, these tiny, tiny pieces of fuzz, were exciting to me. So I brought them back to the studio, and breaking them open and looking inside, there's this perfect geometric network inside. It's a honeycomb of 5-sided shapes that form, they shift in scale as they move around the core of the seed itself. And this idea of this internal space harkened back to some of the deer bones that I was working on a couple of years ago, and hollowing them out, removing the marrow from the center of something, and then gilding that interior space with gold. And I started to think about this gilded network, this idea of a pattern built out of light. I was taking all of the buds from the trees I was finding, projecting them up onto the walls of my studio and tracing their form. There's something powerful to me about silhouette, about what that reveals to me, about the specific nature of a form, seeing these tiny spikes that are evident at the ends of the petals, how each of them meet and make a tiny hollow inside themselves. These things aren't evident when you're just looking at the piece itself. I was also cooking and drying the skulls, so I had an amazing cache of deer bones. And then on March 15th, just 10 days into my residency, COVID became so extreme. My college, Grinnell College, where I teach, had closed, and Bernheim was closing its doors, and I knew it was time to leave. This is the last image. The sheets of paper on the wall are the size of the windows in the Sassafras room at the Visitor Center, and you can see at the back of the image, there's a tiny gilded network that's starting to form of the inside of that sycamore seed. As I was leaving, as I was driving out of town, I took photographs of the windows of the Visitors Center, which was then closed as I was leaving town. So I came back to Omaha. I was really sad. I know the country was sad. People were really confused. We were in a situation that felt very confusing, and it's only become more complex since. I photographed these sycamore trees every day. I was looking at their buds, much less far along than in Kentucky. It's a lot colder here in Omaha. This is snow from April 16th. And I was taking walks every day, runs every day, looking at roots of trees, thinking about how strong and resilient trees are, how strong. Even growing through a fence, seeing how these trees could live and thrive even through great stretches of time. Again, these sycamore seeds kept coming back to me. I was projecting them, looking at them. I went camping at Toadstool National Park in Nebraska and found this patch of ancient creek bed that had held some of that same network, thinking again about this connected path, these interconnected patterns that reference deep time. So I proposed that I fill the sycamore tree with bands of gold that match the inside of that sycamore network. I love this image and this idea of standing inside that space and being inside filtered light that would come through those open oculi. After doing more research, I learned that this creek is rich in copper. There's a lot of copper mineral in the water, and so we've decided to gild the tree with metal leaf, with metal copper, tiny, thin layer, like gilding in a medieval manuscript, just paper thin pieces of copper that will go inside the tree with gum arabic inside that space. And on April 25th, the most wonderful gift came in the mail. Jenny sent me these buds from the sycamore tree. They are so lovely and so alive. I immediately took them to the studio and started tracing them on the walls there. This is my setup. It's a document camera and a sheet of paper, but blowing these seeds up, I could suddenly see these buds, this beginning of life, this beginning of inspiration. I was tracing the networks, and this is me in the studio. The blue tape on the wall is the size of the window, the largest window in the Sassafras room. This is 50 inches by 28.5 inches. And I'm pinning up a drawing that's a trace of the end of the branch. And I'm gonna overlay it here with a tracing paper that holds the entire sycamore network on top of it to start to make plans for how to make these drawings work, how to translate this onto glass so that it will change the atmosphere inside the sassafras room as well. I want that feeling of a changed space, a space that feels filled with color and light and pattern. So what I'm doing here is tracing the fine line of the edge of the sycamore bud onto this network so that I can move these files. I can photograph this and move it into a digital file. Jenny, if there are questions that come into the chat, feel free to jump in with them as I'm going through too. So this is a network, this is a tracing that I hand cut of the sort of original sycamore network. And here I am in the studio, again, tracing those original forms. This is a layout of the groups of 9 windows. This is sort of how I started to think about that space. There's 78 windows that I'll be working with, so it helps to break them down into groups of 9 to think about how the branches will move across that space. And here is sort of a beginning of a cut. This is just a hand cut test. I have glass tables in my studio, and I was laying them out with pieces of translucent vinyl so I can start to plan color and start to think about how I wanted to imagine the space. Again, this is my document camera set up with a magnifying lens and a macro lens from a camera. This is sort of a steampunk setup to be able to view the images very close because I wanted to see all those small details so I could articulate them. The end of this branch is about the size of my thumbnail, and I needed to be able to blow it up to 50 inches long. So I needed some close view. So I have 28 original images that I'm working with for this installation, and they're broken down in the computer in this way. Most of the windows are 30.5 by 28.5 inches, with the long ones in the center being the 50 inches by 28.5. So this is the complete document, and then this is with the pink layer removed. This is the green layer removed. This is the gray layer removed. And then this is the copper network. And this is the original drawing that came from. So this is the process that I went through for each piece. I'm cutting them on a commercial vinyl cutter. This is a machine that just runs a long sheet of sticker through the machine. If you think about any sheet of stickers you've ever gotten, there are shapes and then there are not shapes. So what this does is cut that traced line that I drew in red on that original drawing. So this machine just moves and cuts. And then I take them to the studio where I weed. This is a deeply satisfying process where with a dental pick, I remove all the negative spaces from these sheets of sticker. This adhesive vinyl is, it's a permanent material. It's the same thing that's used on boats, on vehicles. If you have a vehicle that has pinstriping along it, it was probably cut on a vinyl cutter and adhered to your car. So this is a 50-inch piece. This is a close-up. I wanted to show how the two images mate between the windows, between the panes of glass. So once I have the form weeded and I'm ready to go, I stretch out a long piece of masking tape across my table. It's anyone who cooks or spends time with bread might have worked with phyllo dough or pie dough in the past. It's an interesting material, these huge sheets of masking tape. I'm sort of fighting with it a little bit to keep the tension. It's important for it to stay flat. And I measure the drawing against it, the cut vinyl piece, and then I'm going to lay it down on top of the tape. The traditional craft that brought me to Iowa originally was papermaking, which taught me a great deal about laying tenuous things on top of each other and smoothing out surfaces. And it's really interesting to me that the aesthetic of that gesture has proved so valuable in this new, really modern process of working with these cut vinyl pieces. So here I am cutting the masking tape and adhering these two sheets together. It's basically making two sheets of sticky on top of one sheet of not sticky. It gets flipped over and the blue tape will help me orient this sheet 90 degrees against the glass. I'll need to make sure that it's square. So this piece of blue tape will help me make that happen. Here I am smoothing it out. So I'm using a squeegee to flatten the two pieces together to remove any pieces of air that might have gotten between them. I want to make sure that there's a really tight seal between the masking tape and the sheet of vinyl. I love this. It's like a cooking show, just watching the pieces in process. This is a storm window. This is just a test piece of glass. When I do this at Bernheim, here I am peeling the silicone backing off of the sticker. And the sheet of masking tape here is sticky side up. So I'm trying to keep my hand off of it as much as possible to not introduce any oils into it. You want to keep that surface as clean and flat as possible. I'm also checking to make sure that no tiny bits of the sticker are lost in the transfer. I'm spraying the surface with water that has a tiny amount of dish soap in it, and that dish soap will carry any water that might be trapped between the two surfaces. So I'm going to make as tight a surface as possible between the vinyl and the glass. I don't want there to be any air in between there. So the water and the dish soap will help move that out from that space, and it will also make sure that that I can lift it up and move it around to adjust it a little bit, which I'm able to do here without the permanent adhesive sticking to the glass right away. It gives me like a moment of working time. It will also be easier to do this at Bernheim where I have gravity in my favor. Working on perpendicular glass is very different than working on glass that's flat on the table like this. And then I squeegee the surface again, adhering the vinyl really tightly to the glass surface. And then I'm going to peel it away here. You can see there'll be a tiny star that's revealed. Those little stars are my registration marks so that I can make the layers of transparent pink and green and gray line up with each other. And all of those translucent colors will make, it will work like color mixing in paint, right? There'll be an optical mix that will happen. So the colors will be very subtle as they fall into the space. I'm really interested in those pale, pale pinks and greens of early spring when we think about what color that time of year is. It's not the bright, rich green of August. It's the early time. So here is the piece nearly peeled away. I'm removing that last little bit of tape from the surface. This is the part where I have to remember to breathe. So I'm removing that last little bit, and then it comes away. And I'll hold it up to the light here so you can see what that image will look like. Imagine that branch and the leaf itself with some layers of thin, pale green and pink inside that space, but the image will read dark, and then you can see here how bright it is against the surface of the table. So above me here is the longest map. This is 263 feet of reflected sycamore branches that will be the longest wall of the Bernheim Arboretum Visitors Center. It'll be in the Sassafras room there. And these images will be mirrored and shifted across that whole overhang, the largest space of that room. And smaller pieces will fall into all of the windows that surround the space. So this is my proposal for the Bernheim Forest, and I'm so grateful to Jenny and for everyone at Bernheim for supporting me in working through this. Site-specific work of this nature is truly collaborative. You need people who believe in the process and who are willing to do things like send you beautiful samples of spring in the mail so you can get them in FedEx. It was very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lee. That was fascinating. No one has entered questions yet because I think we were so mesmerized by your process. Like I said, it's not every day that we get to see artists do work. And so this was really fabulous. Thank you so much for putting this all together.
Thank you.
Yeah. It looks like there is a question from John Larson. Do you need to remove the windows to adhere the patterns?
No. Part of the beauty of this is that I can work straight into existing glass, which is fantastic. And yeah, what I do is just measure the pieces to fit exactly, and then I will come in and work in situ. It's another great excuse to drive a scissor lift, which is one of my favorite pieces of equipment. So it's fantastic to get to work like that.
So when will it be mounted and how long will it be up? So this is kind of an interesting foray into, yeah, what's happening.
What's happening right now? Right now, I am cutting a lot of vinyl in the studio here. And I hope to be done with that by mid-September. I'm slightly delayed because there's a vinyl shortage in the country right now, which is not surprising given all of the protests that are happening right now. I think there's a big call for signs in the US, which is a wonderful sign. But I think there's some shortages. I'm in touch with the warehouse. I'm sure it will be figured out. But I have one color that's slightly delayed, so I need to wait until that's fully available. But it's permanent, so it will be up as long as Bernheim wants it.
Awesome. Does the temperature of the room or glass make a difference?
It actually doesn't, which is fantastic. I've had some of these pieces that have been up for now almost 5 years and have not shifted or changed at all. And there is a museum in Madison, Wisconsin that has a large vinyl installation that's been up there for, I think, 12, and there's been no shift in it. And the temperature there is quite extreme. So as far as I know, this is listed as a permanent product, as it would be if it were on your vehicle.
Let's see. The spraying of the dish soap between the window and the vinyl to help with air bubbles is new to me. Thank you for teaching me something today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Let's see. What has been the most exciting or unexpected moment of your residency so far? And has it changed the direction of your proposed pieces? And there was a question about plans for deer bones, ?
The deer bones are, I guess I'll answer last first. The deer bones are still in process. I have wax casts for an entire deer skeleton. So I have wax positives for an entire deer skeleton. And I have been working in my studio here to cast those in glass to repair any places in the bones that I got at Bernheim, to repair those breaks, which is so exciting. I see that Andrew Orlowski is on this call, and he's been an unbelievable technical support. Andrew is a master glass caster, and it's a very complicated medium. So I'm learning a great deal there. It's my dream that in the next couple of years, I could have a complete repaired skeleton. That's the dream of my heart, but it may take a little bit for me to get that done. The first part of the question was about changes.
Yeah.
The biggest change was COVID. I mean, I had planned to be at Bernheim for the spring, and now we are in the shift. I mean, the whole world is different now. And I think artists are skilled at resilience and change. Our power is to notice and to see what's happening and to work with the resources that we have in the time in which we live. And this was a great reminder of that truth.
Excellent. So someone was asking about the sycamore and which trail, and I just want to correct you a little bit. So
Sure.
So the Imlich Trail, which is where that sycamore tree can be found, it's actually 1.5 miles. It might feel like a 10-mile trail because it is one of our more challenging trails at Bernheim. But somebody was asking about where that sycamore tree was located and on which trail.
So I'm going to correct you just a little too, Jenny. It's 5 miles, not 1.5 miles.
Oh, sorry. I keep seeing the picture with 1.5, the trail marker, I should say.
Yeah.
Apologies. So, okay, it's a 5-mile trail, but it still feels like a 10-mile trail. Thank you, Amy. Let's see. So Andrew is also asking, or he's saying that he's interested in the link between the positive and negative within your work.
I'm reading it right now. Okay, yeah. I think there's absolutely a connection between those two things, between the positive and the negative in the deer bones, and the positive and the negative forms of seeing something in shadow. I think I'm a drawer and a sculptor for sure as an artist because of those two things. There's something very direct about both of those processes. Painting is an amazing mystery to me because it's an illusion. Like it's layers of color and these worlds are built in a painted surface that are amazing to me. But drawing and sculpture are both so direct. There's an edge on both things. And I really am interested in that edge.
So this is, yeah, from a Facebook question, as if it was going to be painted. So maybe you could just talk about that again, as far as how those pink and green layers will talk to each other in the installation.
So those will all be stacked. So there'll be a pink layer at the base, a green layer, and let me just jump back to where that is. So this is what the whole thing will look like at the end, with the stacked layers of vinyl. And this is with the pink layer removed. So you can see that that will be inside of the seeds. Then this is will be the green, will be the leaves, and this gray will be the shadow of the branch, and also that interior space with that as the final, if that helps.
This is a great question. So beyond the intrinsic beauty of the sycamore and the seed pod that you fell in love with, what drew you to the sycamore?
It's amazing. I mean, this is such a great question from Phil, who's such a wonderful poet. I mean, it's everything, right? It's on water. Sycamore are trees that live on water. Pioneers used them to find riverways as they crossed the country. It's the only tree that the bark doesn't grow with the tree itself. The bark is stagnant. And so when it comes off in these huge, like shale-like pieces. So it's designed to shed itself as it grows, which, right, so beautiful. And this idea that the center could be hollow and appear dead, and the roots are alive, and the heavens are alive, right? That feels like all the things right there.
You'll hear me say this a lot. I think one of the best things about my job is that I get to learn so much about nature through the artists that I'm fortunate enough to work with. And, you know, I really have learned so much about the sycamore tree through Lee and this project. And I'm just really thrilled to be bringing this to life. So I'm gonna shift a little bit. I'm gonna ask you, so when you do head back to Grinnell, you're actually going to be the director of the Center for Prairie Studies on that campus, which is a field station. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, and about your ideas of possibly creating an artist residency through that experience as well.
Yeah, I'm really, really interested in field stations that welcome artists. I feel like teaching at a small liberal arts college for the last 15 years, I find that I have so much in common with the scientists. We are observers. Like, our job is to see. And one of the most amazing early experiences I had at Grinnell was a biologist, Jackie Brown, who was the former director of the field station, who invited me into his lab to photograph dragonfly wings under his microscope. And seeing those images blown up, I put them in a projector in my studio and made them 8.5 feet tall. And the delicacy of those lines was just such a wonder to me. It reawakened my eyes. It re-taught me to see. And I think artists have that in us. And I think there's the ways that artists can contribute to science and to the land is in the act of witness and re-seeing. Like, I tell students when I teach drawing, I'm not teaching you how to draw, I'm teaching you how to see. And I think there's something really powerful in that. And in the climate chaos and the climate crisis that we're in right now, I think we need all hands on deck for this one. I think we need as much eye on the land as we possibly can have.
Excellent. Amy, are we getting any other questions from Facebook?
Nope, just lots of hellos to each other. It seems like everybody on Facebook knows each other. So okay. I think they're all excited to be here.
Yay.
Well, at this point, do we want to maybe open it up if anybody wants to, take their mic off mute and ask any questions in person or start a conversation from this point. We have about 10 more minutes.
Yes. Would the colors fade over a period of time from the sunlight or the ultraviolet light?
As from the field tests that I've done and from I've spoken to chemists and to people that do light testing with this material, it's totally UV resistant. It's UV treated. So the color is fixed and the color is inside the vinyl itself. So it actually, it effectively works as a protective layer. So the color should not change over time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dawn. Anyone else out there? Let's see. Okay. Well.
Oh, I'm seeing one more note here. Just how long will it take to install? Shorter than you think, which which is a great relief because most of the things that I do take longer than I would expect. So I'm imagining that I'll be able to do it in under a week. The installation that I did at Upper Iowa University was almost 1,000 linear feet of glass, and this one is 550 linear feet. So the images are slightly more complicated here. So I've made myself more trouble in some ways, but less trouble in others. And I was able to put that one up in 3 days. I had 2 assistants working with me then, so it'll be slightly slower. But I'm imagining I'll be able to get it done in just over a week.
Do you need good temperatures to do the installation? Or too hot, too cold? How does that factor into it?
I haven't found that to be a huge issue unless it's super cold and the windows don't have a good seal. I had one troublesome installation in the Midwest in an ice storm in February about 6 years ago, and that taught me a lot. But it was because there was condensation on the glass. And I couldn't get a seal between the two. Like it just kept condensing underneath it. But if I can get in there and there's not, nothing's happening with the glass, then I'm good to go.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Lydia. It's great to see you.
Is there going to be a way that you all are working together to make this installation sort of digitally available for people to look at? Or will we have to just go there once Corona is over?
I think I'll be doing some live streamed install shots. So, check in with me. I'll continue to post things on Facebook and Instagram as that goes, but feel free to call. We can chat from the Skyjack. But yeah, it's, I'm more than happy to. And what's great about installing, this is another good thing. What's great about installing in public on glass is that I get to talk to people who would never talk to an artist otherwise. It's amazing when you're working on a window in public, people like wave you down, people write notes and hold them up to the glass to ask you stuff. Like it's fantastic. So please write notes on paper and hold them up on the outside because I'll be able to talk, but only in sign language through the glass.
We'll definitely be letting people know when the install takes place. And like Lee said, we will probably be live streaming some of that and probably figuring out we'll be creating videos and creating ways for people to experience this virtually if they're not able to come to Bernheim. So if COVID has taught us anything, it's how to reach out and have greater access and broaden our mission that way. It's been an interesting ride. But let's see. Because you are on the inside, doing the installation is like being inside of a tree. So this is a
So
great
true.
segue into the pairing of these meditations. Maybe you could speak briefly to that.
Yeah, I think I've been, one of the beautiful things about the Center for Prairie Studies at Grinnell is there's an Andy Goldsworthy cairn that's in the middle of a field there. And if anyone knows his work, Andy Goldsworthy is an amazing earthworks sculptor. He's a British sculptor, Scottish sculptor, and he makes these cairns that are, they're trail markers, you know, but they're these beautiful egg shapes, and he makes them out of ice and stone and all kinds of things. And there's a limestone fault that runs across the US, right? So it's in New York and it goes all the way to LA. And this Prairie Cairn is made from the limestone that is in this long connected piece of rock across the US. And he's made the same cairns at Storm King in upstate New York and the cairns in LA. And then there's one in Grinnell in the middle of the country. And watching the prairie grass grow up over the top of it. And then in the fall, we burn the field and it's surrounded by fire and it's exposed again. And then in the winter, it's covered in snow. And then, you know, and I just think that there's something, where did this question start? Sorry, I got excited.
Because you are on the inside, doing this installation inside, it's like being inside of a tree. And I know that's your correlation to the piece on the Imlick Trail as well.
So I think because art has this power to show us, right? Art has this power to guide us and take us to places that we wouldn't normally go. I was really excited about having this object in the visitor center that would show people something, but then would invite them to go on this walk, to go on this 5-mile challenging hike on Elm Lick, and travel up and down. But also, I'm always excited by work that feels like a secret, that feels like something that you discover. And I feel like if I were on that trail and did not know and came upon this cathedral of light in the middle of this river, I would feel like something spectacular had happened. So I love the idea of people discovering this piece.
Awesome. We have one last question. Will the installation and maybe the pairing between the two illustrate or educate visitors about the climate crisis?
I feel like this piece is really, really advocating for spring. I feel like this piece is really talking about that moment of inflorescence, that moment when things are bursting into bloom. And of all the seasons that are threatened right now, spring is the one. Spring is the one that we may see the end of in our lifetime. We may go straight from winter to summer if the climate crisis continues. And so I hope in this moment to be able to really advocate for spring.
Lee, thank you so very much. This has been informative and really fun. And thanks for all the preparation you did in
thank you.
Doing this presentation with us tonight. And thank you to everyone here who joined us. Your questions were fabulous. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bernheim Forest. And
can I sneak one more in because we got a last minute Facebook question.
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Claude Stevens, who is another Bernheim employee, wanted to know if you ever capture time-lapse video from the inside and maybe from the outside as well.
I would love to think about that. Yes, I've tried time-lapse before with some installs, and doing the work and doing the documentation simultaneously is a lot for my tiny brain. But I would love to figure out a way to make that happen. It's a struggle to record and create simultaneously, but I would love to see that happen at some point. Yeah.
I think we can help you out with that, actually.
Thank you. Thank you, Claude. That would be fantastic. Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your evening. I know we are spending a lot of our lives on screens these days, so it's a real privilege to see these faces and to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, Jenny, for putting this together. This is amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. So
Thanks.
thank you all for coming again.
Bye.
See you. Take care.
So grateful. Thank you.
Amy, sometimes I keep seeing you freeze up a little bit.
I'm on a hotspot too. I
Breath.
don't know why my internet here has been
I
giving
know.
me fits.
Breath. Thank you both so much. Do you need more from me?
No, you're good.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Lee. That was fantastic.
Can't wait to see you. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Sorry to keep interrupting you. It was like the delay is weird, so I didn't mean to.
It's all good. I mean, I think Mark really loved the interactions. So,
Yeah, it sounded like it.
and it was fun to be